Man, they just don't make crash out shooters like they used to. Nowadays, you can't even trust your friendly neighborhood serial killer without having to worry about if he's completely turned into a federal informant. Unfortunately, if you didn't know by now, Lil Durk made the mistake of his career and somehow trusting a dude whose whole career is sliming other people out.
Started at this mobile gas station at 5:30 Friday evening on La Cienega and Beverly. LAPD says witnesses heard multiple gunshots, then watched a couple cars zoom.
Lil Durk is in legal trouble tonight, charged in a murder for hire plot against another rapper.
Now, Durk is currently in a cell fighting against the death penalty, and it seems like the person who's behind it is none other than his trusted, friendly neighborhood shooter. Yes, bruh. Imagine writing a song about giving a dude $50K and taking care of him when he gets out of jail, just for the dude to be the first person to give the feds a laundry list of information on you. It's so bad that the only song that people remember this guy, aka OTF Jam, for, he's literally explaining everyone who's implicated in this crime in their roles in the streets.
Ain't got no patience, wherever he catch you, that's where he gon' shoot it. Booty Mo say he ain't killing no more cause he rich and he paying out shorties to do it.
Talking about Didi having no patience taking people out. Talking about Vonnie laying in the cut with the chopper. Talking about Durk as the voice calling the shots. You cannot make this up. It's stranger than fiction. But this situation that's ongoing with Durk and OTF's indictment is pretty much unprecedented, with all types of specifics coming out about the case, such as who were the shooters, who was the mastermind, whose credit card did they use for the flight and rental cars on doing the drill. It's giving the feds an instruction manual on how to take down OTF. It seems like the biggest revelation was that the feds had an informant within OTF that was able to relay closed door conversations. It honestly has not become completely clear who the snitch is, but many reputable sources have come out and straight blamed Jam. And there's several reasons and how this could actually be true. Although no paperwork has surfaced detailing him, but when you read through the whole case as a whole, you can make this argument that his involvement was actually written within the case as one of the people listed as a co-defendant. People believe that OTF Jam was wearing a wire, but in reality, his involvement in the case might be much more personal than just being on the sidelines. And if that's the case, the whole OTF could come crumbling down in a major federal investigation that y'all wouldn't even believe. So today we got to get into the story of OTF Jam and how a solid 300 soldier could possibly be one of the most revered Hall of Fame snitches of all time. Get into it right now, but before we do, I'm gonna need you to like, comment, subscribe. You already know, man. Tap in with that merch link in the description. Hit that notification bell so whenever I post, y'all tune in. And let's get into this with chapter 1 on Lamron. For what would later go down as a Hall of Fame D1 snitch career, OTF Jam, aka Casey Hester, was born in the south side of Chicago and pretty much grew up over there. Being from the 64th and Normal 64th and Parnell area, known for being part of MTV 079, the city is infamous for having a set of crews associated under one 3-digit number that is infamous within the drill rap scene over in that area. Growing up, he had ties to 300 altogether, you know, being on Normal. You know, the same type of area where Durk, Vaughn, Lil Reese, Chief Keef would all be around growing up. You know, flip the Normal backwards and it gives you Lamron, so you already know. The infamous set known to be where Durk is from. Him and Durk were supposedly childhood friends, but as Durk was getting in and out of trouble while coming up on this rapping, OTF Jam was apparently in the streets still sliding. Durk would mention him later in songs where he pretty much implies that OTF Jam was his shooter and was known for dropping bodies. In the song with King Von Back Again, Durk literally admits that Jam was known for catching bodies. Honestly though, in hindsight, these self-snitching lyrics will have a big role within this entire story. And these aren't even the craziest ones, I'm telling you, like what we were talking about before. Throughout the early years of the drill scene, Durk was running wild, catching multiple gun cases, and dissing pretty much a lot of people throughout the early 2000s. Even though he eventually sort of learned from his mistakes for the most part and got a hit song and This Ain't What You Want in 2013, and began to be a star. At the same time, OTF Jam would get jammed up for an attempted aggravated assault with a firearm charge in 2010, so he wouldn't be there to see Durk's rise really, and that would give him extensive time that would eventually add up to 12 years. He would eventually be released a little early when 68 inmates qualified for a special program in Cook County to get released. Lil Durk would greet him pretty well after his release and give him $50K. But this is where we move on to the next chapter, because this part is crucial. It starts to break down exactly how we got to this point, to the point of snitchery today. So let's move on to chapter 2 to figure this all out, his return to jail. After OTF Jam got out of jail, Lil Durk pretty much gave him 50 bands for taking care of him on that case and doing whatever he had to do once he got out. It's crazy because that was probably his biggest mistake right there. 50 bands is not really that much, especially for someone who got 12 years behind the gang if you really think about it, especially if this dude is making the amount of money that it seems. It seems that this put him on the good side of OTF Jam for the time being, though he didn't buy his loyalty completely. And you're gonna see that from 2022 to 2023, a lot of things will change. However, in 23, things would take a turn for the worse between the relationship when he got caught with another gun charge. After just doing 12 years, you know, no one's gonna want to take another case to the chin, and that could have him locked for a while. Well, this seems like it was an important thing that could have stressed his relationship with Durk. Others believe that there were other things going on behind the scenes as well. It was rumored that his baby mother was killed in a brazen shooting against a USPS worker while she was out driving.
And 3 people have been arrested in connection to the deadly shooting of an Orland Park mother who was working as a Chicago mail carrier. Back on March 20th, Michelia Williams was found shot and killed inside a car on Pond Willow Drive.
Many pointed to that, saying OTF could have been responsible, or he felt that OTF didn't back him up enough. Others made the case that he blew the 50K and upwards that Durk gave him. By the time that his case came, he didn't have a lawyer. He apparently got brushed off by Durk, which started bad blood also. It was around this time that he changed his name to EBK Jam and would later be associated with the ops of OTF Booney, pretty much putting a K on Booney's neighborhood on a story. It's safe to say this obviously had bad blood around, but the actual shooting that transpired and how he actually knew about this point of contention, the internet was wondering how he could have even known the details of this time. It is all gonna make sense in this next chapter, man, because he later fell off with Durk in 2023, but at the time of the shooting he was still tapped in because he just got out of jail. So we got to jump into this. It all starts with the King Von shooting.
A dozen people were shot and 2 others were killed. We have new video tonight of the deadly shooting outside a hookah lounge.
Rapper King Von was one of the men killed. The GBI is now investigating because 2 officers also fired shots. Atlanta
police spoke exclusively with Fox 5's Eric Perry tonight about what they call a chaotic scene.
Atlanta police describe it as a shootout between 2 groups of men outside a hookah lounge. Ultimately, 6 people were shot, 2 killed, and a woman hit by a car in what police describe as chaos.
On November 6, 2020, OTF would change forever when Satan's greatest soldier, aka King Von, would get taken out in a surprise shooting. At an event in Monaco Hookah Lounge turned into an all-out shootout between 2 rival groups, and the top shooter himself became the most infamous victim. Obviously, at this time, OTF Jam was still in jail and wouldn't get released for another 2 years. But this night obviously ties directly into what would happen later. If you had been following rap in the year leading up to the Monaco Hookah Lounge shooting, you would see this beef coming from a mile away. This beef didn't involve Quando Rondo from the jump. He more just inherited a crazy situation that turned sour between 2 of rap's heavyweights. Originally 4KT and OTF were cool, you know, having songs and being alive and vibing with each other. When Von got out of prison, he was vibing with YoungBoy's music and pretty much saying he was a fan. However, later down the line, he would switch up seemingly because he didn't get a feature and he thought he could get one from YoungBoy. This made Von feel some type of way and go on live and basically say that NBA YoungBoy caps in his raps and it's not really about what he's rapping about.
What time about on this song, bro? What? You talking crazy on this man. Oh yeah? He ain't even like that.
YoungBoy saw this and started with Von's biggest ops, FBG Duck. And then on the other hand, Von began with Jada Youngin and Fredo Bang. In the middle of all this, Quando, who was basically inherited a beef even though he's a fan of King Von. Eventually, Von would troll YoungBoy, you know, having Janaea and pictures and stuff like that. It was just not going in a good direction. And eventually this beef would turn into a life-threatening altercation on the night of November 6, 2020. Quando was supposed to do an appearance at his Monaco Hookah Lounge, but it got extremely late and being tired decided to sleep in the back of an SUV. At the same time, Von seemed to be in the city of Atlanta as well and got wind that Quando was going to be there that night. Their 2 sides had beef, but in Von's eyes, since YoungBoy was the main person he was beefing with, he was probably looking to send a message to YB. When Von arrived with a huge group of people, Quando was just waking up for his sleep and stepping out of the car, and they cross each other's paths. Von goes crazy and starts beating the him. Quando's homie Lil Tim then pulls around the corner of the car and fires shots to defend Quando, hitting Von multiple times while also getting shot by the police. Von eventually dies from his injuries. As this happened, Durk got the news of Von's death while he was on IG Live. This news was obviously disturbing to him, you can tell from that moment, and according to the actual case files, it was that moment where Durk would start plotting out a way to take anyone that had to do with Von dying, most specifically Quando Rondo, which leads us to the hit and OTF Jam's involvement in it. So this is where OTF Jam becomes crucial to the story. According to the feds, sometime after the night of November 6th, Durk would say amongst his group, allegedly he would put money down to take anyone out associated with Quando Rondo or Lil Tim. For several years after this incident, most people would see Quando Rondo from just various interviews where he talked about the situation. He really wasn't outside, and occasional songs where he sort of talk about it. He was pretty much inside, plus the pandemic was going on, so there was not many opportunities for shows. Fast forward over a year and a half later, and Quando would start moving around more freely because the heat had sort of died down on him. But that's when you have to watch out the most. On the other side of things, OTF Jam, like I said, would get off of his aggravated assault case in 2022 and get his 50 racks from Durk and have the whole time to do interviews talking about how Durk had blessed him and stuff like that. Things were looking good for everyone involved. Reeling off the craziness of Von's death, Lil Durk was having a real resurgence. However, things would take a major turn when one day in August 2022, Quando Rondo would decide to pull up to LA. It was at this point where, according to the federal complaint, co-conspirator 4 would locate Quando Rondo's location, and somehow OTF would get wind of which hotel he was staying in within Los Angeles. Many believe that OTF Jam was wearing a wire during this point, which makes no sense because he would have no reason to. But when reading the federal complaint, it seems that OTF Jam could have possibly been co-conspirator 2, which would make all the sense in the world why he knows the detailed conversation. According to the complaint, on August 18th, 2022, the day before Quando's cousin's murder, OTF learned of the location of Quando Rondo from a longtime OTF affiliate, co-conspirator 4. People believe that co-conspirator 4 is someone with ties to LA, which is why Brick Baby's name keeps coming up because he's close to Durk and all them. But we don't know that for certain, and he's basically said his innocence. I mean, he hasn't really said that he didn't do it, but he didn't say that he did. So I don't know what goes on with that. After OTF members learned this, the following men took a one-way flight from Chicago to San Diego. The O Block 5, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, aka Didi, Asa Houston, known as Boogie, Keith Jones, known as Flocka, David Brian Lindsay, known as Brown Eyes, would take a one-way flight from Chicago to San Diego with co-conspirator 2, aka OTF Jam. Jam, who would have been out at this time, fits the description perfectly of conspirator 2 because he was only out from 2022 to 2023, and this happened in 2022. The one-way tickets to San Diego were purchased using an American Express card ending in 039 in the name of co-conspirator 3, who is associated with OTF and Banks. Based on records from Apple, they know that on the same day, a number ending in 9595, believed to be associated with Banks, sent a text message to co-conspirator 3, aka who people believe is Vonnie, stating, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." Obviously, he didn't take that direction seriously because you already know. According to the federal complaint, co-conspirator 3, aka Vonnie, coordinated, paid for Jones, Lindsay, Wilson, Houston, and OTF Jam to travel from Chicago to California on the day before the murder. Vonnie paid for the flights using a credit card linked to Banks and OTF. Around that time, Kayvon London Grant, also aka Vonnie, is supposedly known as co-conspirator 3, with his job pretty much handling the transportation, finding the shooters, and setting up the hotels. Alongside him, OTF Didi was supposed to be in charge of the financials within the situation, paying for everything, while Vonnie would get the travel down and would later get the guns and ski masks that would be used for the shooters. On the day of the shooting, Vonnie would travel to California from Chicago with Durk on a private jet. Later that day, Vonnie purchased ski masks for the shooters to use to commit the murder and paid for the other co-conspirators' hotel room using a credit card in Durk's name. Vonnie then rented and paid for a room at the Sheraton Universal Hotel at Universal City, California on August 18th, 2022, using an American Express card in Durk's name again, and having Jones, Lindsay, Wilson, Houston, and OTF Jam staying at the hotel the night before the co-conspirators tracked, stalked, and attempted to kill Quando Rondo. On the day of the murder, August 19th, 2022, surveillance shows Quando Rondo and his cousins and sister leave their hotel in Los Angeles and enter a black Cadillac Escalade. Surveillance taken from numerous locations throughout Los Angeles, including his hotel and the gas station where the murder occurred, showed that two vehicles followed the Escalade for hours leading up to the shooting, and they didn't notice. One vehicle was a white BMW labeled Murder Vehicle 1. The other was a white Infiniti labeled Murder Vehicle 2. Among other things, surveillance video from the murder scene shows murder vehicle number 2 parked in an alley behind the gas station, where 3 shooters wearing black masks exit the vehicle, later identified as Jones, Lindsay, and apparently co-conspirator 2, aka OTF Jam himself. They walked to the gas station and opened fire on the Escalade. The shooters then ran back to murder vehicle 2 and drove away. Murder vehicle 1 drove away from the area just minutes before the shooting. Approximately 50 minutes after the shooting, surveillance video from an In-N-Out restaurant in Los Angeles shows Grant, Jones, Wilson arrive in murder vehicle 1. The video also shows Lindsay and co-conspirator 2 arrive at In-N-Out in a black SUV. Based on the comparison of the surveillance video showing the murder to the video from the In-N-Out restaurant, law enforcement identified Lindsay, Jones, and co-conspirator 2, aka OTF Jam, were the individuals who fired and killed Rondo's cousin. So this all took place in 2022, but I'm guessing the way that this was handled and the fact that the feds had surveillance footage of them the whole day, they had a pretty good idea who was behind it. However, they did not have enough evidence to take down the people who planned it. That is where co-conspirator 2, aka OTF Jam, comes into play. You see, OTF Jam could have been an informant for 12 years that people were saying, but in reality, that would make no sense because he was in jail the whole time and would not have any first-hand account of what was going on. It only makes sense that he was literally there at the incident, especially him being Durk's top shooter and him being free at the time. It only makes sense that he was there. All the feds had to do was wait for one of them to slip up, and unfortunately it was him. And they knew that he wouldn't want to go back because he just spent a long, over decade time there. He would get caught with a gun in 2023, several months after everything went down. At this point, he was already EBK, so he could have fallen off with Durk already, or he could have just not wanted to go to jail for any extensive period, or it could have been the whole thing going on with this baby mama. Regardless, it seems like he gave away the information based off of actually being there in first person. This reminds me a lot of the XXXTentacion case, him being there in first person, but in the X case, the dude that ratted on all the other people didn't actually shoot anything. He was just there. They're saying that OTF Jam actually shot something, man. So it's going to be interesting to see who exactly was the informant, and if it is, I mean, in paperwork, we haven't seen anything yet, but how did they get all this information to be able to get evidence, to get wiretaps and stuff like that? Because you gotta have probable cause for that. And how did they know about Durk is the main thing, unless the OTFDD dudes and those dudes who got caught first snitch. It only makes sense that they had someone who was there to lock all this in, man. But this just goes to show you shouldn't be doing murder for hire, because at the end of the day, if you cross straight lines and get a murder for hire charge, bro, you're getting the death penalty. Like, that is worse than just someone going out and murdering. You're paying for someone to travel using interstate transportation to kill someone, bro. The government is gonna come down on you heavy, and it looks like he just pled non-guilty. So we're gonna see what's gonna go down, man. But hey, let me know in the comments what y'all think about this real estate shit. You already know what's going on. Like, comment, subscribe, gang.